Hello everyone, I'm Rob, Head of Content at Gather Content. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Best Practices for Conducting a Content Audit. Before I hand over to our presenter, Jeff, there's just a little bit of housekeeping that I'd like to cover off. So firstly, the presentation is going to be around 40 minutes, give or take, so that does leave us plenty of time for questions at the end. If you do have any questions for Jeff, please submit those at any time during the presentation via the GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll work through those after the main presentation. We are recording the session today, so I'll send a link to that tomorrow along with a copy of the slides as well, so that'll all be coming over to you. And we're also going to be live tweeting during the webinar, so if you would like to join in, then we'll be using hashtag GCWebinar. That's everything for the housekeeping. As I mentioned, our presenter today is Jeff. Jeff Coyle is a data-driven search engine marketing executive with more than 18 years of experience in the search industry managing products and website networks. Jeff is the co-founder and chief product officer for MarketMuse, where he's focused on helping content marketers, search engine marketers, agencies, and e-commerce managers build topical authority, improve content quality, and turn semantic research into actionable insights. Before joining as co-founder of MarketMuse, Jeff owned and operated his own inbound marketing consultancy and managed the traffic search and engagement team for TechTarget, which is a leader in B2B technology publishing and lead generation. So Jeff knows his stuff. I've seen his deck, and there's lots to look forward to. So without any further ado, Jeff, it is over to you.
Hey, thank you so much, Rob, and thanks for everybody for joining us today, whether it is live or you are listening to the recording. So today, just like we talked about, what Rob led in is really focusing on content auditing. You know, what you can do today to improve your processes, to be critically thinking about content quality and comprehensiveness. But first, kind of taking a step back, one key thing we look at, we've looked at so many agencies and so many internal content auditing and inventory processes. And so understanding what we are speaking about generally when we think about a content audit or content inventory, in that it's evaluating both the quality and comprehensiveness, but also the effectiveness, and how the content that you create, the content that you improve, and the content that you invest in for yourself or for your clients or on behalf of your clients, what is the business case for that content, and how is that, how is the yield on that content producing, efficiency problems or efficiency gains or, measurable impact against key performance indicators. One thing that we see quite often is that a content quality or effectiveness or efficiency audit is, for some reason, tied to a site structure or technical search engine optimization or some other interaction or some other audit process. And what happens in those situations is that the fact that it's paired to the site or the structure or the technical auditing yields a slower time to realize value. And the perception that this is something that's really daunting, something that can only be done yearly, something that can only be done quarterly, or even worse, something that can only be done in a situation where it's as a result of a migration or a redesign or a new key performance indicator being declared by the CEO. And so by separating the perception of what it means to audit content and to evaluate content, separating it from things that are really vital, site structure audits, understanding a navigation model, understanding the accessibility of content. That's extremely important. You have to have that. That's must for your business. But it doesn't have to happen in tandem to content strategy and content auditing and effectiveness and such. Technical audits, site speed, markup, rendering, URL structures, assessment of your content management system and its impact on performance, whether you have a historical migration that's impacting things, whether you're doing a redesign. All of these things have to be in a great place in order to escort the content that you're investing in into a situation where it can perform. It's the door. If you have major technical problems, if you have major site structure problems, if you've got content 7 levels deep from the homepage that nobody's ever going to naturally navigate to, and you're relying on that as a signal to tell tell organic search or tell users who are wayfinding throughout your site to find it, you've got other problems for sure. But the content, effectiveness, auditing, and content strategy and content assessment has to be in parallel and in tandem, but it doesn't have to be at the same effort to get things done. They're separate endeavors, and performing an audit of content quality and effectiveness and comprehensiveness when it's separate and managed, and the business case is made on its own, can yield a greater understanding within the organization. It can allow the content marketing, editorial leadership, and search engine optimization resources to get on the same page quicker. And the results mean a faster cycle. Quick to Rob on this topic, and we wanted to kind of get a lay of the land of the teams and of the people who are viewing the webinar today, is how often are you doing this on behalf of your clients? How often are you doing this for your main property? And there's going to be a poll in your GoToWebinar. So I'd love to know, kind of, is this something we're doing annually because we've tied it to this big, huge thing? Is it something that we are confident in our monthly approach of where we're at with our content?
Well, thank you, Jeff. Yeah, I've just launched the poll, as is always the case, as more people answer, obviously the percentages change. Currently, though, nobody's saying weekly. 4% monthly. Again, they're changing, so bear with me, although there is a clear winner. 22% currently quarterly, 30% never, and 45% annually. So annually is just stretched ahead there. Have they settled now? I think the numbers have settled. 47% annually, 30% never, 20% quarterly, 3% monthly, and still 0% for weekly.
Excellent. And so we are ahead of the curve. Awesome, as I'd expect in a webinar audience with Gather. But thinking critically about why I often will ask this question is to say, if you're on annually, you should be afraid of the quarterlies and the monthlies, and thinking about what that percentage is, because they're potentially going to pivot. They're potentially going to create, optimize, expand, reduce tactically, more tactically than you. What if that's your competitor? What if you're in a situation where you can't move as quickly as they can? Let's say to identify a page that needs to be created outside of your editorial calendar in a more tactical fashion. Let's say to update an existing page strategically, or to fill a gap that's identified. And so those folks that are moving monthly, that are doing a much more ongoing assessment. By the way, high fives to everyone who's doing these as well. If you're not, that's okay. This is something that's why you're thinking about the webinar today. It's to say, where can I get started? Where can I look at this and say that there's more than just maybe my aspirational editorial calendar to how I'm deciding to build content? And that's the spirit of kind of what that content audit, what it means, right? It's the process of evaluating that quality and that effectiveness, and saying that based on my relative to my competitors, relative to what a subject matter expert would build if they were covering a topic, how does my content represent myself, my business, my entity? And so the steps to get started versus the steps to really do advanced auditing, it's not that big of a gap. It's not that big of a gap. And all of these things can be done manually. They can also be done with the help of software solutions. Obviously, I'm the co-founder and chief product officer for MarketMuse. So we have a SaaS content inventory and auditing solution. But that's not what I'm here to talk about today. It's really what I'm here to talk about is that process to get started, get something that you can confidently execute more often, separate from any big, huge, daunting tasks, and start to make impacts more on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, tactically. Whether that means tactical optimization, tactical creation, or tactical even connecting content that tells the story that you are a subject matter expert. So there is a spreadsheet in this deck. I know it's a little bit painful, but I did want to show kind of some of these manual processes. So really getting it started with content inventorying or content auditing, you have to have everything. That's the process of an inventory. If you're doing an inventory of a grocery store, it has everything that are on these shelves, or maybe some things in the back room. So listing every page and understanding the groups of the content that you create is a key component of getting a lay of the land. Are there pages that are in a bucket, or they're in a group that not everybody feels is very valuable? And even more important, how do the different departments or the different groups think about content impact? Think about the groups. Are they grouping content differently? Is the editorial content team grouping these content items by topic but my performance marketing team or my search engine optimization team is grouping them by traffic. You're going to run into that. So getting a lay of the land as to how we're grouping, getting all on the same page, really important. This can range from really simple, or you can have all your wires tied together right now, and you're going to have a big challenge in order to get everything in one place because you've got 19 websites, or you've got 14 different content management systems. These are situations that I have dealt with. Or like we talked about, a situation where I know that I've got 300 websites. All of these things can be very painful to get them all into one place. Picking out the scope of the work that you can do, making sure that it's going to make sense and connect to the business case for the work that you're doing. My goal with the content audit is to have actionable next steps, whether it is me getting everything and then only focusing on one project because of my bandwidth or because of my resources, or I know that I need to execute on 5, 10, 15 projects in tandem. That doesn't matter as long as I get a good starting point for everything that I've got in my inventory. And then it's getting on the same page as to what it means to be a performing page, what it means to be important to the business. So often we see editorial teams with a completely different perspective on what's important than the lead generation focused demand generation team, or maybe even an e-commerce team. How are these pages contributing to that success? Are they primary traffic or entrance drivers? Are they important for wayfinding? So users are going to one page and then they're finding their way to this page. Are these important for legitimacy? Are these important because it tells the story that we are a subject matter expert driven group that's writing content that speaks the language of our target personas? Or do we just not know? Do we not know what it means? Do we just rely on 5 pages to generate all of our traffic? So often we'll see sites where 90% or more of their recurring organic search traffic comes from less than 10 pages, but they're still writing 20 pages a month, just hoping that some of them will perform, and in a non-tactical fashion, in a non-strategic fashion. So part of this, again, is to figure out what are those pages that have higher than normal performance levels, no matter what that performance indicator is. Is it entrances? Is it social media off-page factors? Is it link off-page factors, inbound linking off-page factors? What is it that takes these pages and separates them from the norm? Because my goal in the end is to raise that norm. I want more of the content that I create to do better. I want more of the content that I create to really tell the story that I am an expert and that I am doing better than I'm doing today. Because in the end, obviously, that's the business case, right? I want to put action items in place that say I want to create these items, I want to update these items, I want to remove these items in many cases or consolidate. And in the end, I need that I'm going to spend this much and get that much, and that much needs to be more. More of the pages I create need to be top performers than they are today. That's what I reference when I say content efficiency. I created 10 items, I got this much out of them, or I had this much support value out of them, and tomorrow I'm going to be getting more by either creating the same. It's going to be easier for me to create business cases. It's going to be easier for me to justify the work that I'm doing. It's going to also yield situations where I'm not just doing things editorially that aren't having an impact on my business, which is painful. So often we see collections of content created that had no chance to perform. And that's the thing that keeps you up at night if you do the work that we do. You look at a page, hey, how much money did you spend on this content package? Oh gosh, 50,000, 100,000. Oh, we've been, $250,000 over the course of a year. You really didn't have a chance. There's a completely different set of things that you need to do to build infrastructure to get pages like that to perform. Again, flagging those underperforming groups, because this is the starting point. This is then that thing that says, okay, well, in January, I'm going to deep dive analyze this topic. In February, I might analyze that topic. Or I have enough bandwidth to analyze everything. And then last, to staying here where, checking for the pages that I know are truly important. I know represent my business well. I consider them very important. I consider them, and I say pillar pages here, but really that means it's speaking the language of users. It's comprehensive. It's telling a story that we know what we're talking about. We know the content that we address. And you actually, if you look at this here, you see some of the ways that we group our content on this slide. Oops. And so one thing that's going to come out of this are reasons to act. So you've got reasons to act that says, why is this page punching above its weight? We invested a lot in this, but it's underperforming. What are the things that I've identified as being, anomalous in nature? They are something that I need to dig into. It's something I understand. Maybe it's something I know I need to focus on, but this is providing that additional business case. So some of those things that we'll talk about in a little bit more detail of the next step processes. One is I want to do competitive gap analysis. One is I want to understand intent and cluster analysis. When I say content cluster or intent, is to say how many of the things that people care about with respect to this topic are being addressed by my content. Whether it's one page, whether it's a collection of pages. Do I have mismatches? Am I writing an article that is telling the story that it's going to be comprehensive, but it's actually not? Maybe users are getting to this page with one intent profile, and then the content itself doesn't satisfy. So I'm going to create a situation where I'm doing well, I'm authoritative enough to perform well, in this case on chronic heart failure, but you get to my site and I have nothing that's telling the story that I'm an expert on chronic heart failure. So you've got situations where you have to analyze this content. You've got to figure out those mismatches. You've got to figure out the mismatches between what your editorial team thinks are your target topics, are your target goals of the business, and your search engine optimization or your lead gen or demand gen team or your PR or social team. What are their group mismatches? You got to get those covered and assessed. You got to figure out your intent mismatches, where you've got content that tells the story that doesn't necessarily say that you are a subject matter expert or doesn't comprehensively cover this topic. Or worst case scenario, these pages aren't even connected. So I've got pages about left-sided heart failure and about diastolic, but they're not connected against something that's telling the story that I know all about all the types of heart failure. And when you tie that to, buyer journey analysis or persona analysis to say, do I have the right amount of coverage to address early stage awareness? What is this? What informational type things do I need? Now, what would somebody who is in that purchase or additional research process wish to know about these things? What questions would they want to answer? How much coverage do I have in the middle of that funnel? How much coverage do I have closer to the purchase side of the funnel? And then how much content on this topic do I have later stage, after purchase, troubleshooting, someone who owns a solution or has already taken the pills that they were prescribed as part of the prescription journey in this medical example, or had a procedure done. What are the things that they would want to consume from a content perspective? How many of those things do I have? So it's across and down. It's my breadth of coverage. It's my depth of coverage for each one of those pages, but then it also gets a lot more empathetic. It's to say, what do those users care about? Why do they care about it? And what do I need to do to address those gaps? And addressing those gaps is really, again, like I mentioned, are they grouped in the proper manner? What are those topics? What do we care about? And aligning to the buyer journey, you're going to find quick wins. If I've already done really well on topic A, topic B, and those are related, and there's naturally clear understanding that the topic C or topic D, these subtopics, are part of this buyer journey, and I'm doing well with A and B, and C and D exist, and I can back that up with data. Maybe even those pages are performing in organic search, but not all that well for those secondary or tertiary topics, or those other intent profiles, or I've found mismatches. Well, then it's naturally going to be the case that if I cover them and connect them properly within that cluster of content, within that connected collection of content, they're going to have an easier time performing. They're going to have a means of a natural exhibition of my subject matter expertise that if I was writing net new content, it wouldn't, right? So if I have a page that covers all the types of heart failure, and I've got pages about diastolic, but I just had a clear gap. I didn't cover XYZ type of heart failure. And now I do. It's going to have a more natural likelihood of success. Well, what does that do, right? I found this gap. It's got an easier way of performing. Well, my efficiency rate for content just went up because I have a real level of confidence that that's going to succeed. Maybe I'm finding an entire stage of the customer journey that I've completely left out. But I've got really high performance on the early stage, maybe higher performance on FAQs that I've written or questions answered more later stage. Well, I've got the middle of the funnel. I have a lot of confidence that when I cover that, I'm going to have a greater chance to perform than something net new. So again, it's thinking about my breadth of coverage. How much content have I written on this topic? What's my comprehensiveness? How great is it? How much of that content would I stand by? Would I love to print out and put it next to my head on a headshot to go, this is a content item that I've created. I love it. It's comprehensive. It's also performing. It's also competitively appropriate and puts me in a spot where I put something out that's equal to or better than my competitors on this topic. And that's where I'm going to go off on a little tangent in this discussion, because this is really something that's truly, truly a miss in most content assessments and content audit processes. It's really, and I even put some tactical steps here that you can do, take away today, even without a solution like MarketMuse or with another content assessment or content auditing or content efficiency analysis solution or platform. When you're doing competitive analysis, and the first bullet is just for simplicity. Let's find somebody that is similar to us. That's called we're trying to find a competitive cohort. You don't have to do this. You can find sites that are bigger than you, smaller than you, in order to assess. But this is just to get you started in looking at competition, looking at someone that you care about. This can also be your business competitor. And the things you're trying to answer is, how often are they updating content? Do they have content that's better than mine? It's equal to or better than mine from the standpoint of comprehensiveness, not just performance. But can I just say this is answering more of the customer's needs and the desires than mine is on these specific topics that I care about? This is a must-have step in any content assessment process, any content auditing process, to say, who are my competitive threats on this topic? What's the competitive pressure? If they're creating 5 times the content as me, but it's not that good, okay, I might be able to live with that. If they're creating fast, if they're pivoting fast, if they're clearly tactically updating content, that's something I need to take note of. I need to go to my higher ups within my organization and say, hey, guys, this is a situation where we're creating 5 articles per year on this topic. We're the winners now, but we have a huge risk of standing still, because look what they're doing. They're picking us off intent by intent, personality per profile, persona profile by persona profile, with these tactical content packages. Or I've got a big dog coming in and they're writing against my topic and they weren't before, and here's what they're doing. I want to make sure that I'm representing my business with content that's equal to or better than theirs every time. And obviously, one of the punchlines there is you can do that manually, or you can find software solutions that perform this. This is a screenshot of a competitive analysis solution called MarketMuse Compete. It's part of our platform, where you can assess any topic against any page to say, where are its gaps? Who is doing really well? Who's writing great content on that topic? Who isn't? Where are clear areas of opportunity for me to differentiate my page? Where are clear areas of opportunity for me to tell the story that this page is the table stakes? This is the stuff you have to include, versus things that if I were to include it, it would be great and differentiating, versus things that, if I include them, they may have some benefit, but maybe they're not as vital to include in that article. And so the net of that is, I've got my assessment framework. I've assessed all of my content. I've figured out what my pages are. What are the topics that I'm going to really do a deep dive analysis of my content performance, but also what it means to the world. What is it telling the world? Where is it? How is it addressing the market? Where in the buyer personas that I'm addressing? Where in the buyer journey is this content focused? And I put a mirror in front of my face. It's not always a pretty face that you're looking at, but it's saying, gosh, I really have a huge gap here. I have either a gap against what my subject matter experts would say, against what my editorial team would say. I've got a gap in leads that I need to generate. I've got a gap in traffic that I need to be generating, or it's a competitive gap. gosh, these folks are moving faster than us. For some reason, they're punching above their weight. I know I can take them over if I start moving faster than them. Any way we slice it, by separating this process against some of these more longer term, I can move fast. I can come up with things that I need to do from a creation perspective, from an update perspective now, that's going to have more of an impact on my overall content efficiency, which again means that I'm going to write content that is equal to or better than my competitors every time. It's going to give me my best chance to succeed, and it's going to address the types of user intent profiles, these types of user intents that I care about. And overall, that's going to give me a better chance to succeed. And one way that we think about this at MarketMuse is by thinking about content clusters. And content clusters are, there's so much information on the web now, but 10 years ago when I first started doing this and successfully before it was really a thing, it was just about kind of trying to find keyword variants. There wasn't a lot of semantic analysis opportunity, semantic relatedness or buyer journey or user intent analysis technology that was out there. But you can also do this just logically. You can also think about amongst my inventory, where do I have content that addresses these needs of users? Where do I have content that's getting traffic from users and then it's not satisfying those user intent profiles? This is the most common with very powerful sites that have odd frameworks for content where they're writing just like generic guides. This is not truly addressing a lot of the needs of customers. They're not writing a lot of support content. But in your situation, the way to really think about content clusters is against both that intent profile, those intent profiles, but also subtopics. So what are the subtopics that I need to address to tell the story that I'm an expert? And then who are the users that I need to speak to logically so that when they come to my site, they're like, wow, these people really know about this topic. They're not just putting out a small amount of content and hoping that this is effectively a landing page. And here's an interesting example as to some things that one might, and obviously this isn't a comprehensive example of a content cluster, but it does tell the story. It's to say, I know everything about car maintenance. Amongst car maintenance, there are n number of things that I would need to know. Obviously, the real answer here is I would need to comprehensively cover this hundreds and hundreds of topics because there's a lot to do with a vehicle. But then there's also pages that I have in my inventory that are important. They're really important. They may not generate a lot of entrance traffic, but it more tells the story of the fact that I truly have an understanding about a lot of the different facets of this specific topic. So, for example, if I just have the guide to car maintenance and no other content items on my site, does that really what a subject matter expert would put into the world if they truly knew everything about how to fix my Subaru? And I know it doesn't say Subaru, but it says Hyundai. But that's the things that I would have to know in order to cover this topic and to exhibit to the world that I really get it, that I really should be your standard source of truth when I'm researching. And how does that manifest into linking? In the situation where we get a lot of situations where you have an existing framework where there's great comprehensive pages that are all the way down, dug in deep, 7 or 8 clicks away, and they're not connected to the pillar page. So what we try to consider is that you've got to map this to the natural buyer journey. If I had landed on this page, what would I want to know? There's great, search engine optimization, visionaries who are out there saying, make sure your page answers the question that you landed on, but also answers the next 5 questions or points them in the direction to answer those 5 questions. That's the standard bearer for how to intersect and how to make these pages connect. So many times I see linking problems within clusters where people, they've been given bad advice. They're linking externally to very semantically related topics and very semantically related articles. If you're trying to say that your site is the source of truth for what is a great podcast microphone, and then you point to someone else that's giving that exact definition or that exact advice, that's not telling the story that you are actually the expert, that you've provided the best articles on this topic. But if you answer the 5 questions about ways that you troubleshoot or ways that you buy, or what things to look for based on the acoustics in your room, that starts to tell the story that you actually know what you're talking about. So internal and external linking strategy that tells the story that your cluster is appropriate to facilitate that buyer journey and map to user intent is a top priority here. And like I say user intent a lot. What does that mean? And a lot of times people think about this only from Google search engine optimization, Google search engine results pages, favored intent. So there's this, I could talk about this for hours and hours, as you can probably find some other webinars where I do that. But basically, a lot of times people are limiting themselves by only looking at the organic search results pages and saying, okay, well, if I search for this term, I get these results. So this must be the most important intent profile. This must be all I need to cover. That's not the case. You have to have content that covers all stages, that covers the entire user intent, that buyer journey, everything that people care about, in order to have a chance to perform for your more specific, your more targeted approach item. I'll give you an example. If I'm covering CRM software, and someone types in, what is CRM? Into the search engines, and there's a great long-form guide or definition. Well, if I just go out with a site that doesn't have any other content about CRM on it, and I write a long-form definition for what is CRM, it has no chance to succeed, because I have no other content that tells the story. Then I know everything about this. Then I can speak to the entire buyer journey about this topic. And so why should I be the standard of truth or the source of truth for that short definition or that guide or that definition? It's the same reason if you were to just go out and build a long form pillar page and not support it with anything else, it's not telling the story that you're a subject matter expert. Very, very few cases where there's going to be exceptions to that rule where you can just go out and do something. And a lot of times that's based on some off-page factors or based on a lack of competition in a target area. But that's something to always be thinking about. Where do I have content in this area? Where do my clusters facilitate or facilitate the buying process or the research process? And that would tell the story that I actually know what I'm talking about, that I actually am building content that's going to get you from A to Z in the process that I wish for you to read about and learn about, or net purchase on my site. And as I just said, it's not always about looking at that search engine results page, but it is a great source of information. So you look at that, it's also you need to do additional persona research and buyer journey research. But one thing to think about is what you see on that search result page can give you a little bit of some hints. It's not the only source of truth, but there are hints. And those search features change all the time. What you're looking for is situations where maybe the search engines aren't sure of the intent. You've got stuff about this particular stage of the buyer journey, and also one that's different. You've got images, you've got e-commerce solutions, e-commerce results, you've got a mixed bag of types of pages. Well, that's going to tell you that there's a thing called intent fracture on this query. That's very different than two different meanings. It's very different than ambiguity in that query or specificity. It's to say that there's a lot of different ways that somebody who is typing in this query or there's somebody who is researching this would want to research this topic. If you type in, CRM software, like I was just referencing, well, what is CRM software? All the way down to, I'm looking to evaluate vendors or make a purchase decision or troubleshoot, a problem. That entire gamut of information that one might want to research underneath that topic needs to be addressed by my content packages and by my site that I produce. And here's some things to watch out for, and I think this is where I'll really kind of wrap up this discussion. It's some really bad processes that we see, and I think this is worth the weight in gold of hanging out and listening to us, today. Things that we see often are kind of bad advice, primarily bad advice that's given from somebody that's very keyword focused. Here's a keyword we want to focus on. Let's go write a page for every keyword. It's not thinking about the user. It's not thinking empathetically. It's somebody who said, hey, just write a long form page for every keyword we care about. We're not thinking about the subtopics that a subject matter expert would naturally cover. We're not thinking about the buyer journey. We're not thinking about what the user path would be when they land here. We're just writing kind of this template somebody created and long forming it and saying, these are the 10 keywords we want to rank for, so go write 10 pages. Not supporting content, not supporting the buyer journey, not supporting a great user experience either. You know, my background's in usability and user interface design, so I'm always thinking about, if I were to land on this page, do I feel good about my experience? And does this deserve to rank? The best thing I can do when I walk in the door with a client who's got a very powerful site is find a page that's ranking well, but it's actually not supporting the intent of the page, the intent of what the likely user path is. Because now I can give advice to improve that. I feel really good about the fact that we've improved that buyer journey, and also all boats are rising. This page is doing better. All the ones we create down the road are going to be using better, going to be performing better. The overall efficiency, everybody wins. You know, the user wins as well as the business wins when this happens. And again, the last thing I'll mention is culling content based on traffic. Culling or removing content or consolidating content, only looking at, you know, performance metrics, is a disastrous mistake we see mid-market all the way up to enterprise. They take off the bottom 10% of traffic getting pages. They don't think about semantic relatedness. They don't think about whether this page fits into a buyer journey, whether it's otherwise. They're just looking at traffic. But there's probably a lot of other reasons why this page isn't performing or this page is underperforming that need to be investigated. But again, some pages just provide support value. They just provide information that tells the story that your core page or your pillar page actually deserves to rank. So removing content should only be done if you know you've done something really stupid in the past and created really low value things, or you know that it's not supporting the high quality standards of the current. And even in that case, really critically thinking about, is this something that is a candidate for consolidation? Have I evaluated all the key performance indicators and the factors that are involved in assessing whether this page has a chance to succeed? Or am I making this decision solely editorially? Am I making it solely for some, you know, whether it's has merit or doesn't have merit, SEO decision, or demand generation decision? And a lot of times, if I'm only making the decision to remove content for those reasons or for a specific data point, I'm making a mistake. So, you know, removing content is something that really shouldn't be taken lightly. And it's where we see the most historical remediation need when we're walking in the door, trying to figure out, you know, where the bodies are and why the wires are tied together in the way that they're tied together. And the last thing I'll mention is kind of a quick plug before we get into questions. You know, MarketMuse Suite is, you know, we're a content intelligence and strategy platform. We enable and automate all the process we've talked about today. Getting your entire inventory into our technology, being able to evaluate at the site level gaps, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities. What content, if I created it tomorrow, would have immediate success? That's the type of insights. And even giving you the why. It's because you have intent mismatch here. It's because this is an area where you already have authority and you just need to knock the pins down on these topics in order to succeed. We also produce comprehensive content briefs, outlines, business cases, and executive summaries that you can hand to a writer, and they can begin writing and being creative and doing the things that they're good at with confidence that if they cover this topic comprehensively in the manner described by that brief, it's going to have success. And we also provide topic reports is one of the things in addition to our content briefs that we provide. Topic reports assess everything we talked about. It dives in. It looks at your current coverage. It looks at your gaps. It looks at your strengths and weaknesses. It also gets into a detailed dive of all the competitive landscape for any particular keyword, for any particular topic with respect to your pages, with respect to competitors. And today, anyone that's listening or even on the recording that references this, fills out this landing page on the topic report, we're going to send you a free topic report on a topic that you care about. I would recommend get your spreadsheet out, get your existing content inventory, look at something that you think you've got a reason to act. You want to research this topic. You want to dig in deeper about these pages prior to just, don't just send a word. Don't just put, dog into the top of the report. It's not going to give you the business benefit that it could. Find something really deep dive, really explicit, and shoot it to us, and we will give you one just so you can see what's out there that you can use to improve your content auditing process to make this a weekly reality. We have teams that are working with us and auditing their content constantly, getting excited because last year 4% of their content got recurring traffic. Out of the $1 million they've generated, only 4 of their pages, $1 million that they spend on content, only 4 of their pages get recurring traffic. Now they're doing 10%, 15%, 20% of the content, or even more, is generating recurring traffic, generating the metrics that their business cares about. This is a way to get started, pairing it with some analysis on your end to make sure that what you submit is going to have a real business benefit. So thank you so much, and hopefully we have some questions, and we'll get into any details, any level of details. Really ask me anything here.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff. That was an absolutely brilliant presentation. I loved how focused it was, fast-paced too, great, nice and high energy, which always goes down well. We have actually had about 5 or 6 questions, I think, and we've got about 15-20 minutes, so we should get through all those and have time to get through any extras if they come through. So I'm going to start at the top and just, we'll work our way through. So the first question that came in is from Holly, and it's, I appreciate doing an audit on a small amount of content to get some data to build a business case is worthwhile, but how can I really sell that in, as doing that on a larger scale would take time and resource? Should we choose one benefit to focus on if we can quantify it?
Yeah, I think that's, there's actually a really good book that answers this question too. So a good takeaway by Paul Ladenburg-Land. It's called Content Audits and Inventories. That covers building a great business case for an audit. So I would recommend pick that up. I think it's like $10, and I have no commercial interest in that. But that's a great question. I think it's about understanding each of the department's business cases, and you may not have that buy-in yet internally. The business case needs to be clear, needs to be understood. It also, it kind of gives you a weighted bat or an unfair advantage if you do tactically one thing and show results, because it is less of a burden on that overall process. But I think it's getting on the same page as to the influence, but it's also walk them backwards down the timeline. My favorite thing to do with people who are researching, obviously MarketMuse, but also just thinking about enacting this process, is to say, what if we don't do this? What if these things happen? What if this competitor moves faster? What if we stagnate? What if traffic doesn't grow? So the way that I sell internally, the way that I sell audits, is to say, where do I want to be aspirationally in 12 months? And how am I going to get there? What if I create the wrong content? So look at my last year's performance. What if we just do the same thing we did that year? We're not going to achieve our goals. And so the two-pronged approach, I would say, is go deep down, don't go into the future, walk it backwards, and say, do I really need to do this with just one topic and prove it internally? Or can you respect that a lot of external pressures, or if our performance is the same as last year, it's not going to get us where we all need to go. So one of those two things is kind of cooking the process for you. One of those two things has to work, right? Because it's either prove it, show your work, get it done, hit those KPIs, or they're going to buy off that. Oh, wow, yeah, if we just do what we did last year, if something were to happen where, a major publisher or a major publishing entity were to enter our space because of something we know about the market because we're experts, that's going to put us into a tough position, or external pressures that we can't predict. Like if we know we're at a little bit of a risk of standing still in an area. ROSS, risk of standing still, is a great one. Competitive pressures, walking it backwards from last year's performance. All of those business cases work for audits. So hopefully you can take one or all 4 and mix them together and create some anxiety internally to give you a better budget.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Thank you for that question, Holly. And I'll include a link to Paula's book in the follow-up email tomorrow because I've got a copy of that, and it definitely is a great read. So yeah, good shout out there. Thank you, Jeff. Next question came in from Joanne, and it's: we have content inventories for different departments, customer success, marketing, etc. Should one person be responsible for joining those together and overseeing audits, or should we let them handle it all themselves, I guess, in silos?
Yes, those teams need to be working together. It is those pages need to be working together. Absolutely. We see siloed situations all the time, and there are a few depends in here, right? User generated content, forum content, post-sale documentation. In very large corporate environments, oftentimes when we're working with them, we will still work with post-sale docs, so post-sale documentation, technical documentation. All of that is very important if you can weave it in to the pre-sale documentation or the buyer journey documentation. So there are a few special cases, but it is very, very important to have that unified content strategy. There's so many reasons for this, but I'll use a few examples. Your customer success team, especially, knows your solution. They know the pain points that it answers. They know the specifics about how, and I don't know exactly the business that Joanne works with, but you want those things unified and you want them weaved together into that purchase journey. So I would say map your departments to purchase journey is one way to think about it. But also it's to say, what of the content across team do we love? And we want that to be part of the experience. So often we'll see the demand gen team, their inventory is only a bunch of landing pages. And if you're in that situation, then you absolutely need to weave those in because those landing pages are operating out in left field. They're not integrated into your broad strategy. They're not generating conversions naturally. If someone reads an article on your site and there is a landing page for a premium content item or for a white paper or for something like that, and it's not featured prominently there, it's not integrated, you just a huge missed opportunity. So I think there's a lot of reasons to unify. The only reasons not to unify would be buyer journey confusion from technical documentation or post-sale documentation. So you don't want to have those types of information points. Another reason to separate would be troubleshooting materials. Troubleshooting materials during the buying process can take someone off course. So with the exception of those two types of pages, everybody should be under the same roof, and you can make strategic decisions if you have those other page types in your pool.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jeff. Great question. Thank you, Joanne. Next question is from Jenny, and it's how long does a good content audit take, or should it be viewed as an ongoing thing? Thinking about billable hours at an agency.
And this is why. That's such a great question. High five there. This is why the market has the problem, right? It's because in a lot of cases, the thing to sell is an audit, right? It's this big audit up front, the agency, big audit up front, because that's a great moneymaker. I feel an agency or a SaaS provider who has services component or a great customer success program, like a company like MarketMuse, would be. I think it has to be both. It has to be a situation where we're getting everybody on the same team. We're making sure that we're aligned on our vision, our goals, and we're going to do this to create a source of truth of where we are today. And we have to update this frequently. We have to update it as frequently as we can. They have to support this. And the question on billable hours, I wouldn't even say it's a depends. I think it's based on a couple factors, though. It's based on the client's content cadence, lots of C's in the content marketing game. The client's content cadence, the digestibility, how much they can create, how much they desire to create or update through you if you're the agency, or if they're working with a third-party content provider. And then the size of their sites and the size of that endeavor. All of those things are are the components of research. What I would like to also instill in someone who's doing this from an agency perspective is there's going to be quick wins. I think that it's natural to want to get everything, but in that style, I don't feel it's fair if you're an agency to parcel out or dole out quick wins slowly or on an ongoing basis. I think it's respectful of the client to deliver. If you found 15 amazing ideas, deliver them and then figure out a way to resource them. So is that going to be ongoing when it gets into the reality of their resourcing? Sure. But I think that part of here's your foundational stuff you've got to do over the long haul. Here's the stuff you need to have consistent cadence of content creation. Here's the stuff that needs to be updated consistently. Here's the stuff that's going to win quick. Let's get that done. Let's put the points on the board. All of those things don't answer your question, but they are the things that that would influence the number of hours that you're typically going to bill. I will want to deliver the output of my, let's just say, quick wins, or my content strategy advice within that first 30 to 60 days to provide a situation where I can aspirationally model forward that in 6 months, you're going to increase traffic or 3 months based on how fast you can move or how fast you want to pay me to move. I'm going to want to really put in heavy hours early to provide those two key data points, and then it has to be recurring. They have to have a component in that is monthly at worst, that gives advice. But again, if they're writing 2 articles a month as a result, then why would you provide advice for 80 articles in that month? You got to get aligned on cadence, if that makes sense.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Thank you for that question,
Yep.
Jenny. Another great question, another great answer. We've got a couple more and still time. So the next question came in from Catherine, and it's, how does this content audit method work for non-profit or public websites? I work for Bristol City Council, and we don't have competitors as such.
That's a great question. So I don't know the Bristol City Council website very well, but what I would say, it doesn't change a lot except what your key performance indicators are. I assume, this is assumptive, that your goal is to create awareness for the programs that your city council or your the borough provides. It's really that persona analysis. It's what eyeballs do you want on the site and why, for what reasons. So nonprofit versus this, the competitive landscape, you're going to have search engine result page competitors on the topics that you care about. They may be commercial in nature. So you are in a bit of a commercial competitive analysis bind in certain situations. It doesn't change a lot except what the standard is for what you desire. Maybe different. You're maybe not generating leads. You're probably not generating sales. You're probably not focused on average order size or on lead quality. But it is you should just get a shared understanding within your organization about those key performance indicators and determine, do you have competitive commercial items who are generating traffic for those content items? Are there commercial entities, or is it all nonprofits? And then the great part about that is, if you're thinking critically and you can create content tactically that's better than all of those nonprofits, you're probably going to be in a situation where no one else is moving fast. So you're going to have an easier potential play to do well and create awareness for the things that your business, that the city cares about. I'll give you a good example of this in healthcare, nonprofit. You're going to be in a situation where you've got publishers, where you've got vendors. So let's just say in the heart space, you've got publishers like a Healthline or a WebMD. You've got vendors, you've got Boston Scientific, or you've got someone like a Merck. But you've also got nonprofits to compete with. You've got to assess the situation that you're up against in order to determine whether your content has a chance to perform. And the other angle here, if you're in a local site, is you're probably got some local competition from vendors or from advertisers, depending on the nature of the target topics that you're focused on. I don't know any of those things off the top of my head, but let's just say you wanted to create awareness for your acumen in legal matters within Bristol City, well, you're going to have lawyers and other advocates that have websites that you're going to be competing with when you're expressing the fact that you provide legal advice or legal advisory as a function of the city council. I'm making that up, but it gives you an idea. You're going to have competitors, whether they are direct competitors or just commercial competitors that fall into writing content on the topics that you care about. Hope that answered your question. There's a lot to unpack there, so I hopefully that answered your question.
I'm sure that was helpful. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for that question, Catherine. Actually, Catherine's just dropped me a message saying that's really helpful. So there we go.
Oh, good.
That's perfect. We've got 2 questions, 5 minutes, so we should be okay, Jeff, if we go a little bit over. Yep.
Yeah, sure.
Brill. The next one actually also touches on competitors. It's a question from Philip, and it's for competitor analysis, how can we accurately assess their content in relation to informing our own when we don't know their business goals and how the content is working for them? Maybe there are gaps for a good reason, maybe they get lots of the wrong traffic, etc.
Yes. So this is a super long answer. I'm going to just shorten it to say, yeah, that is true. What we want to find is their blind spots. We want to find situations where we can assess how much content they're creating, how much content have they historically created. You also want to look at their off-page factors historically to accurately understand how much their link acquisition strategy. This is maybe a little esoteric and deserves a deep dive. And their velocity, the velocity that they've generated off-page factors. In addition to that, I have another presentation specifically on that I can also find a link to for Philip. What you certainly can't assess is their conversion rates without actually looking through their stuff and to say what is working for them. You're also but what you can do, and this is the answer, kind of the question, is assess that against the field, the entire field of competition, to see if they are anomalous. If they're doing something that no one else is doing, then they're worthy of you doing a deep dive to say, is this providing user value? Or, this is way off base. If everyone's doing it, I need to do it, but better. If only one person or a small selection doing it, is it truly differentiating them? Or is it actually just completely off course? So that's what this type of data analysis can give you, is to say, is this truly table stakes to get in the game? Is this differentiating for them and providing value? Or are they just kind of off in left field trying some tactics that don't have the user in mind? I think that answers the question, but I also, I'll look into finding, I do have a discussion that covers that type of process and how you can figure out if there's if they've lost their way, or they're doing something because an SEO that didn't know what they were doing told them to do it, or something like that. And those can be great situations. In the best situation is you find out that they're not writing at all, or they're not updating at all. And you can figure out that it's because their editorial team has a process that doesn't allow them to, or it's highly likely for them to change their editorial strategy drastically and pivot frequently. So what really, those are the big wins you're looking for, is who are these zombie sites that are not publishing, these sites that won't update, the sites that have odd strategy, strategic elements. Those are the easiest ones to find. That more deep dive situation where they're writing content that may not be providing conversion benefit, sadly, you're gonna have to do that manually.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Philip. Good question. And if we do get that link, then obviously we'll pass that on. The last question, which is perfect timing really, is from Hannah, and it's, what is your response when clients say, well, we don't want to keep any content, so we don't need an audit?
We don't want to keep any content. That's going to be that's fun. So I would want to know. I would want to unpack that pretty significantly. A lot of times, I'm assuming Hannah or Hannah. I'm sorry, I didn't hear which one it was. I'm assuming that it is because they're doing a migration and they have a perception of value against a particular key performance indicator. And so what your then job is to say, actually, these are driving some components of value, We can't toss everything out. And so, in that situation, it's, obviously there's something weird going on there if they want to delete tons of content. And so you are in the situation where you're having to report results, and you're having to analyze what the intent of that content was in the first place, what the results are, what value each page has that isn't maybe as obvious to identify, not just keyword rankings, not just traffic, not just social shares, not just link benefit. And the toughest situation here is when maybe the content's about products that don't exist anymore. Maybe it's about antiquated technology. Maybe it's about something that is just out of date. It's just not. But it has this historical record value. It has value in that it tells the story that you've been there. Your business knows this stuff. At one point, you were talking about how cool the AS400 mainframe computers were. So now that logically tells you the story that you know how to do business systems programming or business systems hardware. So you've got to weave that into a narrative that tells a story that this had some value, if it actually does have value. And that's I guess the tough part is has this actually generated value? I'll tell you, I've got so many stories of this type of situation for so many different reasons. But a lot of times it drives towards editorial perspective of value based on content that's outdated, or the perception that they're going to write a whole bunch of new stuff really quick and they don't need the old stuff. So those are the two things, is to say, and here's a good takeaway. You can say, well, okay, if we were just to go start off a brand new blog and write reviews about iPhones, how quickly do you think that site would establish itself as the authority on that topic? How much content would we have to write? It's going to take you a really long time and spend a lot of money. Why toss out all that existing authority? Let's say you go write that same review on a site that has hundreds of thousands of pages that tell a story that I know a thing or two about phones. It's clearly going to have an easier chance. So why toss out this collection of stuff unless it's super low quality, unless it was created for the wrong reasons, unless it's malicious, unless there's some other problem? Don't toss that existing authority if that authority actually exists. The brand new site versus an old one, and that person has an easier time performing, example usually works in this scenario. If it's about editorial legitimacy, if it's about this outdated information, make the case for putting a header box on that page that says, hey, we recognize this is on a topic that is no longer tremendously relevant. Well, point a link to the stuff that they're going to write that is, and say, hey, we keep this for historical record because it's very important to us. I don't know exactly the case that you're discussing, but one or two, or maybe another hybrid of that is probably going to at least get you in the right narrative with the client who's put their foot down and said, hey, delete all this stuff. So hopefully that gives you the answer. I don't know the whole situation, but those are some examples that I run into frequently.
I'm sure that was helpful. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you for that question there, Hannah. So that does bring us to a close. Just to quickly recap, I'll be in touch with tomorrow UK time in the morning with a link to the recording, link to the slides, link to the book that Jeff mentioned, and the other presentation as well, if we can dig that out. So that'll all be coming over tomorrow. But for now, I just want to say huge thank you, Jeff. That was such a great presentation and some brilliant additional insights and advice in the Q&A as well. Really appreciate your time today. And thank you everybody who joined us, and for those that asked questions as well. We do really appreciate that as well. So yeah, that's it. Thank you everybody, and hopefully you can join us for another event soon. But for now, I wish you well and hope you have a good rest of your day.